Welcome to How the Dark Web Works, a webinar by LMG Security. Our presenters for the webinar today are Sherry Davidoff and Matt Durin. Sherry Davidoff is the CEO of LMG Security. As a recognized expert in cybersecurity and data breach response, Sherry has been called a, quote, security badass by the New York Times. Her new book, Data Breaches, Crisis and Opportunity, is available now. Her professional experiences are featured in the book Breaking and Entering, the extraordinary story of a hacker called Alien. Sherry is a GIAC certified forensic examiner and penetration tester, receiving her degree in computer science and electrical engineering from MIT. Her new book, Ransomware Response, will be published early next year. Matt Durin is the Incident Response Team Manager for LMG Security. He is an instructor at the International Black Hat USA conference, where he specializes in incident response, ransomware cases, cryptojacking, and banking Trojans. Matt holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of Montana and previously worked as a blue team field technician / system administrator for over 10 years. His malware research has been featured on NBC Nightly News. And at this time, Sherry, I will pass you control of the webinar.
So Matt and I are really excited to present how the dark web works to you today. I think I would say it's probably our main hobby, honestly, is surfing the dark web, finding cool things, tracking the latest developments, and it's amazing how much has evolved over the past several years. Wouldn't you say, Matt?
I would say so. Yeah, it's incredible how it's changed.
Yeah, and it's been coming up a lot lately, in part because of cyber extortion sites. So we are now seeing a development and an increase in cyber extortion sites that are both on and off the dark web. The latest one from this past week is Acer. Acer was hit with ransomware up to $100 million. And of course, this is frightening to think that hackers are inside the network of a major computer manufacturer. That could have other potential consequences for our supply chain. But they were being held for ransom by a group called Revil. Revil makes the most popular ransomware software out there today. And this is their blog. It's called the Happy Blog. It's on the dark web. And on the Happy Blog, they are constantly publishing their latest exploits, so the companies that they have hacked. And they threaten to publish more data unless they receive the ransom demand. So that means that more and more journalists and media outlets are covering the dark web, are accessing information on the dark web, and criminals are leveraging this. So our roadmap for today, we're going to start off by talking about what is the dark web, and then the underlying technology. Why is it so dark? How does it work? We'll talk briefly about how WikiLeaks began. It actually probably wouldn't have started without Tor in the dark web. Then we'll show you how you can access the dark web, and there are some caveats here. There's dangers involved in surfing the dark web, so do be careful if you decide to check it out. And we'll walk through some of the goods you can buy, everything from guns and drugs to stolen data, hacking tools, and more. We took a little shopping trip. We finally ended up launching our own Darknet Market. This is what we've been working on until what, like midnight last night, Matt? I was so excited. So we now have, I'll give you a little hint, the elite giraffe marketplace of our very own. We've put up a few products, and we'll show you what it looks like from the attacker's perspective or the criminal's perspective. And then last but not least, we will go through cyber extortion sites, not just the sites themselves, but also talk briefly about the underlying software, how they work. All of this is a whole hacker economy that has evolved, and as you'll see, it's become very mature. A lot of the features that we see on the dark web are just as advanced as normal e-commerce sites. In fact, in a lot of cases, they're even more advanced, especially from a security perspective. So let's jump in. What is the dark web? So the dark web actually runs essentially over the normal internet. So your packets do still get routed across the normal network, but it requires custom software and protocols to use. The key factor that defines the dark web is anonymity. The whole point of it is that if you're a web server, you can't tell who the visitors are. And if you're sitting on your workstation, you can't track down whoever is running the web server you're visiting. That means that someone in the middle, say the FBI, can't ever map your computer to the websites you're going to. So anonymity is the critical defining factor of the dark web. It is not confidentiality, and we'll get to that. So why do we use the dark web? I do want to point out that there are good reasons to use the dark web. Everything from military intelligence, bypassing censorship restrictions in certain countries, people who want to learn about certain sensitive topics but don't necessarily want to be tracked with cookies. Journalists use the dark web, especially journalists that are in countries where there's a lot of monitoring and censorship. We may be able to protect children, like if you don't want your children to be tracked, you want their web surfing to be private. And then also anonymous whistleblowing. That's really big. Whistleblowers often exfiltrate data using the dark web. There's also evil reasons to use the dark web. I think I'm missing a slide here, but what are some of the reasons why criminals use the dark web? Well, for communications purposes, to coordinate amongst themselves. They use it for e-commerce and cybercrime. And of course, they use it for engaging in cyber extortion. Just want to give a shout out to our dark web research intern, Derek. You are awesome. On the screen here, you can see Good Derek. Good Derek is setting up our marketplace and helping us configure our systems. Evil Derek puts products on the dark web and helps to buy things for us that we can analyze. So many thanks to Derek for taking on good and evil roles in this process. All right, so when you surf the web, it sort of looks like this. Anybody can connect the source and the destination if they can view all of the traffic in between. So for example, if you have the NSA monitoring, hypothetically, they would be able to trace the source to the destination, or just an internet service provider can see all the people coming from and where coming from someplace and where they're going to. So that's normal web surfing. You can trace this down. Dark web surfing is different. In the dark web, you are actually going through multiple computers. So your traffic doesn't directly go to a web server. Instead, it goes through a number of other intermediary computers. And we'll use 3 for the purposes of our example, but it doesn't have to be 3 often. It's 4 or 5. The reason why you want to keep it relatively small is because, of course, every hop slows things down. In fact, I think the most common refrain from the past couple days was Matt saying, yeah, the dark web is slow. So we don't use the dark web for performance reasons, that's for sure. And because your traffic goes through all of these other computers, it is naturally much harder to connect the source to the destination, and the use of certain protocols makes it actually impossible, or virtually impossible. One of the most popular technologies used to create the dark web is onion routing. There are others, but this is by far the most common one. Onion routing facilitates anonymous web surfing where the source and destination can't be connected to each other. And the concept behind it is that your message, as it's passed through the internet, is encrypted in layers like an onion. And each node, and by node I mean a computer, each computer that it goes through peels off the outer layer and exposes the address of the next computer in the path. But nobody can actually see the entire path. So this is a simplified example, but let's talk about how you create your path. So when you decide to surf the dark web, a circuit is built. And a circuit is just a path that goes through the network to your destination, let's say a website, and then back. So that's the circuit. The first computer, computer A in this case, is the guard node. That's the entrance computer. And not every computer can be a guard node. You have to build a certain amount of trust within the network for obvious reasons, because what happens if the guard node is taken over by, say, the FBI? Not that this happens. Well, the FBI can watch all of the incoming traffic, and they will at least know that first hop. And then there's the middle node. The middle node should never be able to talk to the source or the destination. It never knows either of those endpoints. All it knows is the messages come from computer A and they go to computer B. And then finally, there's the exit node. That's C. The exit node is the last stop before the destination. Now, how does this circuit actually get established from a technical perspective? TLS is used to create a session at each step. And the routing information is encrypted, but not necessarily the data within, and we'll see that. All right, what we're about to talk about with respect to onion routing depends on asymmetric key encryption, something we discussed in depth last month. And I'll just give you guys a quick refresher for those of you that may have missed our last webinar. In asymmetric key encryption, what one key locks, the other key unlocks. You have a pair of keys and they go together. So if I have a secret message, I use an encryption algorithm with a public key that I give to everybody in the world. And then you see in the middle just your scrambled message. And the only person that can unlock it is the person that holds the matching private key. So what one key locks, the other key unlocks. And typically there's a public key that's out there in the world, and the only person, and you can use that to lock up data, and the only person that can unlock that data is the one that holds the corresponding private key. So that is the concept, really that fundamental concept that makes the dark web work, and also cryptocurrency and ransomware and lots of other things. Good things too. So if you want to learn more about that and you missed our last webinar, check out How Encryption Works. It's up on YouTube and it's right there in LMG's channel. Okay, so let's walk through how a message actually gets encrypted. So the source computer has data that you want to send over to the destination. Maybe it's a web request. I would like to visit this website. And that is encrypted with the public keys of every computer in the circuit in layers. So it's the data is encrypted with the address of computer C and then computer B, and then it's initially sent to computer A. So let's walk through this. The source computer sends the whole shebang over to computer A because the source knows the address of that guard node, the first computer. And computer A, you can see the key matches the outside layer. So that outside layer is encrypted with computer A's public key, and the private key is used to unlock the address of the next hop. So now A knows the address of computer B and peels off that outer layer and sends it along. Okay, so now computer B has it. And computer B has the matching key, so that outer layer with the address of C is encrypted with B's public key. And B uses the key to unlock that outer layer, finds the address of C, peels it off, and then sends it along. And now computer C, the exit node, has the data and can access the address of the destination. So here we see the matching key again. The address of the destination is encrypted with C's public key. C uses the private key to unlock it. That layer is peeled off and the data goes along to the destination system, and then it works in the reverse for the path back. So that's fundamentally how it works. Those layers are just peeled off as it goes through the network. That is the whole concept of onion routing. And that's why somebody who's monitoring traffic, even if they were to gain access to, say, the middle node or the exit node, they wouldn't be able to match the source to the destination. They might, especially if they had full access to one of these computers, they might be able to see the content, the actual traffic, but they wouldn't be able to understand who was sending it or necessarily where it was going to, depending on where they were looking. So there are ways to break anonymity. Matt, I don't know if you want to speak to this one. It's something that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways that have been kind of utilized over the years to break the anonymity that the Tor provides in general, or that dark web surfing provides in general. One of the more common ones that can be noticed is a timing attack, and that's where computers within the network are, we'll call it compromised by someone who wants to see where traffic is coming from or where it's going. They can actually utilize the amount of time it takes for a message to send from its origin to its endpoint to determine roughly where that came from, and that can be used to identify where the traffic actually came from. There's also people who inadvertently give their own details away, because remember, the content going through the network isn't necessarily encrypted. It's just the path that it's taking. So if you're sending things like a social media account or your email address or banking credentials or something like that, those can be pulled out and used to identify you. There's also some really specific features for your computer that can identify it by itself, like the specific resolution, graphics drivers, and some other kind of hardware fingerprinting that can be done. But normally, once one of these methods is put into use, the organizers behind the Tor network will patch it out and make it so it's not really usable anymore. They're very on top of that.
Matt, I know one of the things we're always careful about is window size and not going full screen. Do you want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, exactly. When you go full screen, especially if you have a uniquely sized monitor, again, the specific resolution that you're using and then the graphics drivers that need to be used to render that screen can then be used to essentially fingerprint your system. So if you've got a unique system, that can be picked up and that can be identified by law enforcement or someone else farther on down the road. In fact, the Tor browser, we'll get into this in a minute, but it will yell at you if you try to maximize your screen, letting you know that that is a security risk.
Speaking of Tor, how do we visit the dark web? Again, there's more than one type of software that you can use, but by far Tor is the most popular. It is designed to help you browse the dark web. You can download it from torproject.org, and then you just open the Tor browser the same way you would open Firefox, and here's what it looks like. The founders of Tor are Paul Syverson, Roger Dingledine, and Nick Mathewson. And this whole thing is kind of hilarious to me in terms of how it developed, because Roger, Nick, and I all lived in the same dorm in college. And I remember them like sitting on the couches and developing Tor and talking about how they were the only project that was funded by the EFF, which is Pro Civil Liberties and Privacy. And they also got funding from the Department of Defense. And that just goes to show you how every tool can be used for different purposes. And in this case, the ability to surf anonymously can be very helpful for spying, for law enforcement, as well as just for preserving individual rights and liberties. And unfortunately, also for criminals. So any tool can be used for good and for evil. Speaking of which, WikiLeaks was actually launched with documents that were intercepted from Tor. So you can see Julian Assange here, the founder of WikiLeaks, which is an online service that I think Assange calls it a library of the world's most persecuted documents. So he takes leaked information and publishes it. And what most people don't realize is that he got his original huge treasure troves of information by running a Tor exit node. So he was sitting there, computer C, the exit node. And again, a lot of people didn't realize that while Tor and other types of onion routing software preserve anonymity, they do not inherently encrypt your data to preserve confidentiality. You need to use like SSL, TLS to do that. So he's running this exit node and seeing these streams of information coming across. Some of them are sent by intelligence agents in other countries, sending them back to the United States. Some of them are being transferred by hackers who've broken into systems. And he's just sitting there watching this river of data and starts reaching into it and publishing things. And so that's how WikiLeaks began. You can see that WikiLeaks uses Tor as well for submissions. Click here to securely submit a file. And there's an onion link. Onion links are how we surf to sites on the dark web, and that's going to go into that shortly. So how do we visit the dark web? First, we're going to download Tor. We're going to open the Tor browser and connect our circuits. And then poof, you have a browser capable of accessing the dark web. Very simple, very straightforward. You can also visit normal websites. Again, we talked about protecting children and children's privacy. So you can use Tor just to protect your own privacy. The downside of that is you may be popping out from a computer anywhere in the world, which means it may not be in exactly the language you expect. That happens.
I like this because it learned what I got to learn what I'm feeling lucky was in German. So that's always fun.
Auf gut Glück. Nice. Okay, so let's visit a darknet market. That's our first goal for today. We just want to visit a darknet market. So what is a darknet market? It is an e-commerce site on the dark web, kind of like Amazon. This is the world market. And on the world market are lots of different vendors. Many of them have thousands of different vendors that are selling their products and many different kinds of products. You can see everything from credit card numbers to drugs to digital goods, counterfeit items, services, all kinds of stuff. Here are PayPal accounts, usernames and passwords. Here you have credit card numbers, again, full information about a person so that you can steal their identity. These are just a few examples. Here's another example. This is credit card numbers for sale on the dark web. And I just want to point out that these are fully featured e-commerce sites. So you can see there's a buy now button. In this case, you can buy with either Bitcoin or Monero. You can see vendor information, trust, how much do we trust the different vendors. This is a description of the product. So here you can see its known balances, $3,000 to $13,000. I'm here for my customers. Always fresh CVVs. That means that it's recently stolen. And again, they want to, it's guaranteed. A lot of the time there's refund policies so that if it doesn't work, you can get a refund. I also want to point out here, if you look at the bottom, there's feedback. So people can leave feedback. Awesome, thanks again. Thanks, I will be back soon. And if a vendor starts getting bad feedback, then that may be a problem for them for future sales. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you if you want to talk about how do you find dark websites.
That's always one of the first questions that that comes up when people are asking, well, how do I get to the dark web in the first place? Is how do you make that initial hop into the network? Because the dark web is not exactly publicized the way that normal websites are. And as we've come to find out, that question is very popular among a lot of other kind of privacy services, which is one of the places we started with in this case. So what you see is a screenshot from the Pure VPN VPN hosting service, and VPNs are services, if you're not familiar with them, they're services that you can utilize on the regular internet to essentially pull off the same thing that we're trying to go for with the Tor network. We're really looking for anonymity and safety so that you can't be tracked while you're online. In this case, they put together a list of the 15 best dark web websites that you should explore. So they're kind of giving you the beginner's guide. One of the ones they look for, or they recommend initially, is the Hidden Wiki. And the Hidden Wiki is kind of what Google would be like on the dark web, and we'll talk about search engines and how they function on the dark web here in just a little bit, but it gives you kind of an idea of what we're looking at. The link that you can see down below is an onion link. So this is a non-standard looking web link. It's probably not like anything you're used to seeing going to Google or Amazon or eBay or anything like that. But it lets you out into the main page of what would be a lot of people's first kind of dive into the deep web. So this is what that looks like. This is an onion address, and onion addresses come in a bunch of different formats. There's both version 2 and version 3 that are widely in use, but normally they're anywhere between either 16 or 56 characters respectively, and they're going to look a lot like a random sequence of letters and numbers in most cases. Now, the Tor network will associate a specific path to get to that onion address based on its kind of distribution within the network. The other thing to keep in mind is that these addresses change really frequently. We find it very rare that if we look at a dark web website and then go back to that same link or link a couple of weeks or a month later, it's rare that we actually get to make it back to that same location. These things are designed to be easily rotatable so that even if something is discovered, it can be anonymized again. This is not your mama's regular URL.
Yeah, it's not like CNN.com. Like if you go to an onion link, it may be a different place the next day.
Exactly. So here are some of the other places that we ended up finding our deep web links, at least for our initial jumping off point. One of the big ones was Reddit. And Reddit has curated a few different message boards that are really dedicated to identifying locations on the dark web and then making them available to people who would like to get there without knowing directly how to access them. We also saw some other top 9 onion websites from the depths of the dark web to check out. What was really interesting about this was, and this is a question that comes up a lot, most of the e-commerce sites that are listed in these forums are selling goods that would be considered illegal. So how are they able to basically advertise for those on a public-facing website? And the answer to that is, well, it's complicated, which is kind of the case in a lot of things that cybersecurity has going for it. As long as they're not directly advertising products on these websites, a lot of these posts are allowed to remain. What we'll end up seeing is that people will inevitably start advertising things like, fake IDs and credit cards for sale, and that's when these posts get taken down. But if they're carefully curated, these links can stay up for quite a while. It was really interesting. We also found the dark web equivalent of Reddit, which has a whole treasure trove of additional places you can visit. And this is actually called Dread or Dreadit. And the way I like to describe it is it's just like Reddit, except it's evil. But you can see that the layout of the website is really, really similar. We've got our same things. We have our regular Dreadits, we have our sub-Dreadits, we have our Dreaditors that maintain the website. But really what they're doing is advertising for Darknet Markets. So there are hacker forums, there are illegal gun and drug forums, pretty much anything else you would be looking for, all contained in this nice, really familiar format for a lot of people. So this was a big jumping off point for us, and this actually ends up being a lot of people's really first kind of dive into the darknet and how to kind of navigate. This is the hub, and it's specifically listed on a lot of these sites you should tour kind of lists as where you should start, where you should make your first jump off into the dark web. And it's really beginner friendly. In fact, it's advertised as the way for beginners to get into the darknet. And the conversations on this forum will range anywhere from how to protect yourself online while using the dark web, because it's not as simple as just using the Tor browser, but they also go through how to access marketplaces, how to safely conduct transactions in marketplaces, how to actually get the stuff that you've bought delivered to you safely. So there's a lot of really good information, especially for people who are not familiar with how things really work in this kind of dark corner of the internet. So this is what one of those looks like. This is a listing of marketplaces on the hub, and you can see on the right-hand side we've got listings for places like the White House Market and the Torres Market and the Corona Market. A lot of these are named with some of the products that they really kind of feature, so we can see when something specializes in, like, you know, marijuana or firearms. But it's really interesting that they're listed here and normally kept in a kind of rotating list of which services are live, which ones have been potentially identified as scam services. So very, very helpful, especially for, again, new people on the markets.
So I'm excited because we're really close to visiting our first Darknet Market. We started off on sites like Reddit, we got a link to the hub, we're at the hub, and now we should find some fresh onion links that we can go to. And so we went to a site called Darkodeorg. Whoops. And Matt, you want to show us what this is?
Yeah, so Darkodeorg is one of the first, like, legitimate markets that we decided to check out and include in the presentation, mainly because they sell a lot of products on this marketplace. But one of the things that was really notable about this was the security precautions that they put in place. And you'll find as we're going through, security is a big thing on the dark web. They oftentimes do security a lot better than clear websites do, which was amazing, honestly. But what you're seeing here is a CAPTCHA page, and this is basically meant to keep automated services from accessing the website. So they don't want bots or spammers or anything like that being able to get into these marketplaces and basically annoy their customers. They also don't want people to be able to spoof these websites, which is something that you could pretty easily do if you were so inclined. What they're doing here is asking you to basically enter a CAPTCHA code, like I'm sure you've seen before, you know, prove you're human. But they're also giving you a direct link on the back end to the onion site that you should be visiting. And they make you click a box to say that you have verified the link that they're showing in the background is the link that you're actually going to. If those don't match, then odds are good you're going to a spoofed website or a phishing website that's attempting to steal your credentials, potentially steal your cryptocurrency, impersonate you, or, you know, maybe install malware on your system. A lot of bad things can happen there. So here's what it looks like.
Yay! This is the homepage for a real Darknet Market.
It is.
And you can see all the fun stuff that's being advertised, also how modern it is. So become a vendor, start buying, my watch list, coin exchange. And then at the top, you'll see it says how much you have in funds, whether it's Monero or Bitcoin, there's support. Very, very user friendly. And on the top right, there's a shopping cart, so you can browse and add things as you go along and then check out all at once. So, and here's some more. You can see they have trending products, best rated products. Oh, nice, Matt. I like the ones you picked. Homebrew alcohol, the hacking tools, the eBay phishing page. So lots of options. So tell us about our path through the network. If you click up in the top of the Tor browser, you can actually see where your computer's taking you.
Exactly, and this is the diagram that Sherry showed just a little bit earlier in the presentation. This is our path through the Tor network, or the circuit that we've established to actually send and receive communications. In this case, our guard node is coming out of Germany, which is why if we go to Google or any other, you know, clear web website that's going to look for our location, it is going to think that's where we are. And I know you've all probably visited a website before where, you know, a banner has popped up on the side that says something like, you know, people in your location are amazed by this one simple trick, click here. It's because they're tracking where your ISP is coming out of. Here we can see the layer of obfuscation. So we're going from Germany through a series of relays in the Tor network, and remember, this anonymizes our traffic completely, and then finally out to the Darknet Marketplace. And then traffic follows a similar path going backwards, so the Darknet Marketplace doesn't know where we're coming from either. It's again, very, very nice way to get through. It slows you down a little bit, but it keeps you
prepared for it to take a while.
Exactly. So in a clear web environment, this is, if I were to look up what my IP address is, this is kind of what would come up. So this is me looking from my computer at whatsmyip.com. And it is telling me my exact public IP address, it's telling me my internet service provider, and it's telling me my geographical location. And it's accurate. I mean, it's telling me exactly where I am and who is hosting my service, which again is what we're trying to avoid in the use of the Tor network in general. Now, if we enable Tor and we do the same check again, we get a very, very different result. So in this case, one IP provider said that I was coming out of Amsterdam. Another one said they flat out couldn't find where I was coming from, which was interesting. But that by itself shows that we have now anonymized our location and our pathway through the internet. Nobody can really track us at this point, or at least it becomes a lot more difficult.
So now that we know we're anonymous, let's look for some stuff to buy. Here you can see credit card numbers for sale. So these are stolen credit cards. Either they've been stolen from e-commerce sites or maybe from hacked point of sale systems, and they're available on the dark web. Here's a Visa for 35 bucks. Let's see, there's another Visa for 25 bucks, all kinds of stuff. Passwords for sale. So this says huge database, collections 1 through 5. And for those of you that were following the news last year, you may remember that there were large collections of passwords found available for sale on the dark web. One of them was called collection number 1 with 773 million unique email addresses and passwords. So evidence that a vast number of passwords have been breached. You can buy that on the dark web, or you can buy it, you can download it for free from other places. So this is kind of a bit of a scam. I'm shocked, Matt. I'm shocked.
Yes,
in fact,
very
we see that
shocked.
a lot where they sell things that you can get for free, but they're trying to make a buck off of it. I get it. Here's hospital records. So you can buy medical records. 250,000 of them are for sale by a vendor called Skyscraper with great ratings. And here's the product description: first name, middle name, last name. Let's see, gender, skin, hair, eye, birth date, social security number, birth city, height, weight, street, city, state, zip, phone, driver's license number and state, and then financial information. So there will be all ages and no selection possible. So probably this was stolen from a database that was at a hospital and then put out there on the dark web. It can be very difficult to track this back to the hospital it was stolen from because unlike credit card numbers, you can't identify a common point of purchase when it comes to personal information. So a lot of times healthcare organizations get hacked. The data is out there on the dark web, and kind of like cash, like dollars, you can't trace it back from where it's come from. These are hacked bank accounts. In this case, hacked SunTrust bank accounts, fresh accounts with good balances. The seller says, please note, I'm not responsible for your movements or cash out method failures. So you buy this, they give you a little tutorial on how to monetize those bank account passwords. Often it involves doing wire transfers or other kinds of direct payments. Yeah, and probably they're getting these with phishing attacks, and that's why they're fresh. They're just doing them on a regular basis. Here you can see fake IDs, a new driver's license, hologram with UV, real easy to buy, not too expensive, 35 bucks in this case, and it works. And again, you can just, it's just like a normal e-commerce site, you just click and check out. These are RDP credentials for sale, remote desktop protocol credentials. So if you have a computer that's facing the internet, that computer criminals may be able to log into it using a stolen username or password. So in 2019, usernames and passwords were going for $20 to $24. By 2020, those prices had dropped and they're 16 to 25 bucks each on average. Here's another one. We just got this screenshot during the past week. So again, you can see how advanced this is. There's just a listing of servers. It says the operating system of each server, the speeds. So if you want to be able to host things, the speed might matter to you. You might also care about the country. And then the price, and you can just check the ones you want and check out. It also indicates which ones have admin rights, so which ones have you completely taken over, and those are typically a little bit more expensive. And hacker tools, Matt, I don't know if you want to point anything in particular out, but you can buy pretty much any hacker tools you want on the dark web.
Yeah, the big one is the one that's right kind of center left on the screen, and that's the Ares Remote Access Trojan with a Bitcoin Stealer plugin included
Nice.
for $16. Like that's a deal. You could use that to take over someone's computer, remotely control it, and steal all their Bitcoin all in kind of one fell swoop, and not a bad deal for 16 bucks.
Yeah, and what's this one?
Exploitation. Oh, this was an interesting one to find. So this is someone who has found and has a proof of concept of exploiting a server operated by, what is it, the Department of Health. And they're willing to, yeah, Department of Health of a state on the US. So it's a Department of Health somewhere in the US. They're not going to tell you where, but they have essentially exercised a proof of concept showing how you can break into the server, and they're selling that access off so that someone else can exploit it and potentially steal the data from it.
I think this is really important because it illustrates how specialized different roles have become. There's hackers that will get initial access into your network. Maybe they've stolen usernames and passwords. Maybe they get someone to click on a link in a phishing email. And once they get that access, they will sell it on the dark web, and different criminals will buy it and then go in and install ransomware or steal data or whatever they want. The fact that it's a Department of Health probably implies that they may have health information, and so it's going to fetch a higher price. Okay, so how do you buy something on the dark web? Matt, I thought it was really interesting when you shared this screenshot that many dark websites are no longer accepting Bitcoin. You want to maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so anyone who's created a Bitcoin wallet has probably run into this, but one of the things that exchanges will ask for when you create a Bitcoin specific wallet is proof of your identity. So they want you to send in pictures of your driver's license, proof that you are who you say you are, before you can really access these services. So Bitcoin, while it is a somewhat anonymous way of making payments on the internet, is not actually an anonymous cryptocurrency. And a lot of the Darknet marketplaces, since again, they are selling things that are contraband or are illegal, don't want anything that is directly attributable to a single individual. So they'll instead use things like Ethereum or Monero, which are much more anonymous forms of cryptocurrency. They're a little less well known, no less valuable really, but a lot more anonymous in terms of how much information you can actually get about the person making or receiving the transactions.
Right. And a lot of times the purchase happens through an automated checkout system or sometimes individual chats, and we'll get to that in a little bit. In fact, we'll get to that right now. So this is Evil Derek. Evil Derek is buying malware on the dark web. And here you can see him offering, this is the middle of a conversation he's having with the seller. I'll give you $120 for 2 Trojans. And he says, oh, sorry, is Derek on the left? No, that's the seller. He says, well, how about 4 Trojans? What Trojans do you have? And then he lists out Zbot, SpyEye, that's really old, Shylock, Carburp. And then Derek's looking for one called Goznim, and he says, well, I only have these 4 Trojans. And eventually they work out a deal and buy something. You can also get the COVID vaccine full dose. Yes. Here you can see for $300, you can get something claiming to be the Pfizer vaccine. And Derek engaged with one of the sellers of this as well. They are all over the dark web, by the way. We have like probably 30 screenshots of different Pfizer vaccines and full websites where people pretending to be scientists, I assume they're pretending, are advertising them. So Derek says, how do people like you get them? And the guy says, there's always an insider, bro. Do they come from the United States hospitals, you think? And the guy says, yes. And then if you're wondering if these are legit, Evil Derek asks, do you know what temp they're supposed to be kept at? And the guy says, at room temperature. Yeah, no problem, no problem. And shipping, totally fine. Another thing you can do is hire a hacker. Matt, you want to talk about Blue Skies?
Blue Skies Elite. Yes, I'd love to talk about Blue Skies. So this was a really interesting advertisement that we found. Blue Skies is actually a hacking group, not a single individual. So they're basically farming out services for people as kind of a general hacking contractor, much the way that an IT or an MSP or somebody like that would advertise their services. Blue Skies was advertising that too. They were also big on the feedback, and that you'll see this becomes really important when we're talking about how to trust people in these marketplaces and how to lower the chances of someone ripping you off. In this case, you can see his feedback score on this particular market is a 94, which is pretty solid. It means he's most likely going to at least come through with a variation of what he says he's going to do for you, or what the group says they're going to do. But they also provide a pretty interesting sales pitch. So they go through basically their description of how they can do all of these amazing things they promised to do for such a low price. And it honestly felt like someone was trying to sell us a vacuum at this point, which was amazing. But they really do give you a rundown on what they do. So they talk about how they work with a variety of fraud dealers. They offer flooding services for either online hosts or SMS services. They get databases for personal searches so you can phish people or break passwords. And there's, yeah, again, a lot of really interesting things they can go for. So the big question is, if you're hiring someone like this on the dark web, how do you trust them? Like, how do you know if they're going to actually deliver what they say they're going to, or how do you know they're not just going to run off with your money? The interesting thing is there are rating services and other darknet market industries that specialize in basically vetting these sellers. And we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but this is the links they provide to a service that's called Darknet Trust. And Darknet Trust basically tracks all of these individuals through the marketplaces that they work with, tracks their basically their seller ratings and satisfaction ratings, and kind of aggregates them all into one easy to find place. So you can look up a single seller who is identified using a single PGP fingerprint, so you know it's always the same person, or at least the same group that's operating here, and see what other marketplaces have had to say about them. So if they're ranked highly in one but low in another, maybe look for a different hacker to hire. Just saying.
If you have a problem, you can file a complaint. So this is from the White House market, I believe, but here you can see there's just a standard form where you can report a vendor or a user and get a response from their customer service folks. Here's a specific example.
Yeah, so this is a customer claiming that Blue Skies did not provide exactly what they were supposed to, and what came out in this conversation was the seller was communicating with them outside of the marketplace, and there are a lot of marketplaces that warn against this. They say don't communicate through chat channels, use the marketplace for your communication because all of that communication can be verified. In this case, Blue Skies responded to the individual user and said, I don't know who you were talking to, but it wasn't me. That's why I recommend two things: always verifying conversations using my PGP fingerprint, which is a way to verify basically the signature of a sender digitally, and also investing in an escrow service. That's right, the dark web uses escrow services to make sure that after you pay for something, you actually get the product you want instead of someone just grabbing your money and running off with it. So again, one of those consumer protection services that's built into Darknet marketplaces that a lot of ClearNet marketplaces don't use.
So how do you know who you're talking to? Do you want to tell us about this one, Matt?
Yeah, of course. So I've already hinted at it a couple of times, but PGP signing is huge in Darknet marketplaces. Basically, it is the same kind of features you would use to sign and encrypt an email, so someone can verify that it's you who's sending it. These services are also used in Darknet marketplaces, so you know the communications coming from a vendor are actually coming from that vendor and not someone impersonating them. We also have verified sellers, which again, you think about eBay with a power seller or something like that. Those same things exist in the larger Darknet marketplaces, so you can tell if someone is highly rated. We also showed off the referral links and the verification links, and then the seller reviews become really, really big. Those things are gold in a marketplace. If you have bad reviews, people are probably not going to do business with you.
You know, the use of things like PGP to verify someone's identity, like this is just one example of how the darknet markets are way more advanced than our normal systems here on the ClearNet. We could probably solve the phishing problem if we actually use the technology that we could, and that folks on the dark web are already using out of necessity. So again, if you want to know more about how asymmetric key encryption works, like PGP, check out our last webinar on how encryption works. Okay, show us how we vet the seller. Ooh, is this Dr. Hacker? I love this guy.
This is Dr. Hacker.
Dr. Hacker is selling LinkedIn passwords. Beautiful. LinkedIn was hacked, I think it was 2015, and 164 to 168 million LinkedIn emails and passwords were released and are now available on the dark web. People are still using them today because in a lot of cases, either folks didn't change their password or they reused the password on other websites. That can become very valuable. What do you want to point out here, Matt?
So this one, it's more or less what we're talking about with the verification. So we get the vendors' overall positive reviews for this specific marketplace, and then they've actually imported feedback from other marketplaces where this specific seller operates, using again that PGP fingerprint for verification. So we can see that on the Empire market, he had a 89.5% rating. On the Apollon market, he had a 94% rating. So these are really nice ways to again verify that the person you're working with is actually going to provide what they say they will.
Oh, here's what they're offering in this case. So this is, oh, you can make a killing. I love that they say it's priceless, but it's $2.99, so it's not exactly priceless. And here's all the different things, well, some of the different things that Dr. Hacker has offered. You can see he is a seasoned professional. He has a lot of different stuff, great user comments. So I do business with him if he wasn't a criminal. Here you can see the different things he's selling. I like how they use stock images here. I've seen some of these on Shutterstock. Full scamming and spamming tutorial. Passport scans from real persons. Where could those have been stolen from? Probably lots of different places. And then again, security is important. So they'll do multi-signature verification. Often these sites offer MFA, multi-factor authentication, and are really pushing people to use them because criminals on the dark web will absolutely attack each other. You have very advanced CAPTCHAs. So as you can see on the bottom right, oops. Anything else you want to mention out here?
No, again, I just think it's really notable how security is top of mind for most of these marketplaces. So they bombard you with notifications if your security is not up to snuff.
Yeah. So do you want to briefly touch on Silk Road? And then we're going to show you how we made our own darknet market.
Oh, I'd love to. So the Silk Road is a really interesting story to me, and they are a excuse me, they are a dark web marketplace, or at least they were, or are again. I'll explain what that means in a second. But they've actually been taken down multiple times. So we see they were originally taken down in October of 2013 when Ross Ulbricht, the Dread Pirate Roberts, was arrested. Some of his admins took over again, and also in 2013 were promptly arrested again. The marketplace came back online, was then taken offline in 2020, and this is what happened. So when they were taken offline in 2020, what happened was referred to as an exit scam, and this happens in Darknet marketplaces, unfortunately, somewhat frequently. But an exit scam is where administrators behind a Darknet marketplace will take the marketplace offline for maintenance or some excuse like that. But what they're really doing is stealing all of the Bitcoin that's been accumulated in the marketplace and then leaving commerce open so that people will still continue to buy things. They pocket that Bitcoin, and then a month later or so, once people figure it out, they shut the site down completely and then run off with it.
Yeah,
and
so
again, this is what happens.
They ask you to upload your Bitcoin to the site,
Yep.
So that you can do fast transactions. But as Matt's saying, like sometimes the criminals that are running these sites just decide to take the millions and millions of dollars that are up there and split.
Exactly.
But they're back.
They are back. So one of the previous administrators took over the Silk Road and has brought it back online as Silk Road version 4. This is a message that he put on the website that said all accounts have been removed. Vendors can claim their accounts back by opening a ticket, and then he provides a PGP signature, so you can verify communications between the administrator and the vendors on the website.
If you want to make your own Silk Road, it's for sale. The full market source code is available on Darkodeorg, our new favorite Darknet marketplace. It's $390, so it may even not have been a former administrator. I mean, who knows? Anybody can actually buy the 3.1 code and modify it and put it back up there.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, the Silk Road is not the only market software for sale. In fact, we've started to see a lot of different variants popping up. Here's one, Ekkomar's Marketplace, build your own marketplace. And this is one that we purchased. It was, well, it's advertised for $175. I think by the time we bought it, it was down to roughly 150. We bought it using Monero. And you can see the description. Just a few of the features it offers are categories, vendors, an escrow system, admin panels, messages. So it's nice we don't have to code this ourselves. Let's see how hard it is to use. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Laravel, Matt?
Yeah, Laravel is, for anyone who's ever taken any computer science classes or done any web development, the mention of Laravel might give you heartburn, and I'm one of those people. But yeah, the entire website was built on a combination of Elasticsearch, MySQL as a database provider, and PHP, which is a really, really common web programming language. And it's all done using a framework called Laravel. Laravel is intended to make things look really nice, be really easy to operate, and provide a lot of functionality. So we set it up on a Linux virtual machine. We loaded up the default data to see what it looked like, and honestly, it was impressive. We had a lot going for it.
Yeah, so here's our site. It has mostly template information. We called our site the Lead Giraffe Darknet Market. And again, this is template information. So our marketplace is proud to accept all your favorite types of cryptocurrency. This is before we've set up too many different products. The admin panel will show you by default market statistics, and it gave us default data to load. So this is fresh, like we hadn't actually accumulated 711 real users, but they came pre-installed, so that's nice. Shows the number of vendors, the average product price, again, things we can remove, but we figured we'd leave the default information in there. And then we created a few products, which you'll see in a moment, but the different categories we had are cookies, alcoholic beverages, other drinks, interns, and then mine, I don't actually know what that is. So how do you create an account? Well, you just sign up. Anybody out there can create an account in our Darknet Marketplace, and then once they do, they can turn themselves into a vendor if they don't just want to be a buyer. So here, Evil Derek has created an account for himself, Haxor, and he builds his profile, and he decides to become a vendor. So thanks, Derek. Here's the page where he becomes a vendor, and you upload like your Bitcoin address or your Monero address so that people can pay you. You also have to pay a vendor fee, and you'll get feedback ratings. Again, we're a new vendor, or Haxor is a new vendor in this case, but over time you will build your ratings by having good transactions. People can also open support tickets in our new Darknet Market. I feel so advanced. And then here's one of our products we decided to sell Derek on the dark web. He's 5-star, he has a 5-star rating, and here's his description. He's sold as is, he's up to date on all his shots. He's great with pets, friendly, and in excellent condition. So he was pretty psyched. No interns were actually harmed in the making of this video. Here's a couple other things we posted. The top secret cookie recipe. We also posted some chocolate chip cookies. They look delicious, $4.99 per cookie. And then you can see it automatically created our featured products page. So that was nice. How come Derek is cheaper than the top secret cookie recipe?
We need to talk to him about that.
Okay. He set his own price, by the way. You then go and set up your Bitcoin wallet. So here's Derek going through, setting up his Bitcoin wallet. And then you go live on the dark web. So you set up a server, you configure all the SOCKS proxies and Tor to get your onion link, and then you start advertising your onion link. And then hopefully people come to your market, question mark, question mark, question mark, and you profit. Ta-da! So we will take questions at the end, by the way. I know we're coming up to the end of our scheduled time. We'll probably be running about 5 after the hour. If you can stick around, we're going to talk about and show you, this is really cool, some of the cyber extortion sites on the dark web. We're going to wrap up with that. And if you have to drop off, thanks for attending. And this is recorded as well. Okay, so how do you know that your information is out there on the dark web? Well, you can't actually scan that whole space. There are too many possibilities. Matt, do you want to dig into this a little bit?
Yeah, so again, the big things to remember about the dark web is that links are really constantly in flux as far as what URL leads to what website. So just going out and scanning with something like Google is not really a possibility.
Right.
URLs also don't resolve directly to IP addresses, and unique protocols are in use to either obscure traffic or encrypt traffic once it's on a server, so it makes it really difficult to find. Now, there are ways you can search for things on the dark web, and these are a couple of them. So Haystack, Recon, Torch, there's a bunch of others out there that offer themselves up as darknet search engines, but results on these are wildly inconsistent. And again, even with the databases they've put together, if you search for something and find it, there's no guarantee that at the moment you search for it, when you click the link to get to it, that link is actually going to take you to what you think it is. We also recommend, if you're going to use any of these, be really, really careful about what links you click, because remember, you have no idea what's on the other side of that link. And there are things on the dark web you probably don't want to run into.
Okay, so sometimes the criminals will advertise that your data is on the dark web, so that's helpful. Getting back to the Acer case, recall that the Happy blog was put up by the Revil group, and the Revil group, also known as Sedinikibi, used to be engaged in what I would call traditional ransomware activities, where they would lock up all your files and then charge you money in order to get them back. So denying you access to your files. More recently, during the past year, they started threatening to publish your data on the dark web unless you pay them a fee. So we call this exposure extortion, and that is becoming extremely common. It's interesting to follow Sedinikibi because they are the #1 type of ransomware strain out there today. They make up about 17.5% of the market. They have a franchise model, so they are ransomware as a service. This is not just one group engaging in ransomware. Matt, I know they're probably your favorite ransomware gang. Do you want to speak to them at all?
They really are. I really can appreciate how careful they are about vetting their affiliates, and they operate on what's called a curated affiliate model. Basically, you have to apply to be a member of the Sedinikibi group, and if you're not up to snuff either in performance or returns or your ability to hack networks, they boot you off and never allow you back. They also refuse to work with any English-speaking groups. All the groups they work with are primarily Eastern European, Russian, or Chinese. And they're really, really careful about exactly who they allow into it, which is one of the reasons why they've been so successful and why they probably haven't been caught yet.
Right. So here's a few things you can find on the Happy blog. This is a recent one where they claim to have breached and encrypted a financial institution's information. Also, we got all confidential data about clients and employees of this company. So they're publishing this information and the name of the company to create leverage, to put pressure on the organization, because they'll say, if the company will not pay $1,500,000 in 7 days, we will start to auction and sell all this company's data to someone who's interested. So once the word gets out about this, then all of a sudden you have customers and partners and other people that are concerned about their data being exposed. So we are now seeing a trend not only of data exposure happening or these threats happening, we're seeing a trend where companies are actually paying that as well because they're getting a lot of pressure from their communities. They will illustrate that they've stolen your data by sharing screenshots online. So this is just one example of the Happy blog where they say, here's proof that we have your data, go ahead and look. Here's another one from the Happy blog. Again, they'll take scans, sensitive information, put it up there, usually just a few examples, maybe a couple documents, anywhere up to like 15 or 20, depending how long it's been that they've been waiting. And then if you don't pay the ransom, they will publish a whole data dump. So this is an organization whose information was published on the dark web, and you can, or sorry, on mega.nz. This is a site that's pretty permissive in what they allow to be posted. You can see the tax information for the LLC, contracts, really all of the organization's data was just uploaded and put out there. Matt, do you want to walk us through the proof of exfiltration?
Yeah, so in a lot of cases, they will offer a very illustrated means of telling you that, yes, we did steal all your data. So they'll show you your file structures. They'll show you specific network information. In some cases, they'll actually show screenshots of their remote connection software in your network while it's downloading the data, so you can see exactly where it's coming from and how much of it has already been taken. And they're very specific about this. One of the ways that they'll prove this to you as well, and we've seen this in quite a few of the ransomware cases that we've actually worked, instead of the traditional means of ransomware proof of life, where we would send them a file and they would decrypt it and send it back to us, they send us a list of all the files they've taken and say, pick one at random off the list and we'll send you back a decrypted copy of it. So they're very serious about letting you know exactly what they have.
Yep. Oh, and then they also auction off your data as well, so they make money off of it that way. Want to share some information about that, Matt?
Yeah, of course. So the Happy blog had a whole section of auctions that were it's curated data from specific targets they've hit that I guess they've decided will be of more value to people than just a general data dump. So we see information on celebrities or high value politicians or really sensitive business organizations. And yeah, again, they put it up there. If the company hasn't paid the ransom, instead of just putting it out there for free, they'll start maybe a little eBay style bidding war on it. So you put a deposit down on it, starting bid, and see if you win the price.
I wonder more about what information is not up there,
Yeah, that's a good
like
point.
when there was that New York law firm To the Stars that got hacked, and it was hacked by the Revel Group, and quite a few of those stars information are out there on the auction site, and it says not paid, but not all of them are there, and it makes you wonder if some of them paid or if the law firm paid for some of them. All right, Conti. Conti is the successor to Ryuk, is that right, Matt?
That's correct.
Yeah, do you want to share a little background on this one? I believe you grabbed this screenshot.
Yeah, exactly. So similar to the Sodina Kibi group or the Revel group, this is their Darknet Marketplace, public name and shame site. So they provide a listing of all the companies that they've taken over. They provide in-depth incremental data releases for each one of them. So they'll show like 7% or 10% or 15% of the data has been released. They show when the data was taken, who the company is that's responsible. They provide like websites and media information about them. So really just a full featured listing of everyone they've gone after at this point.
You had to blur a lot of stuff on this page.
I did. A lot of the stuff they have on there is directly related to the companies that they've gone after.
Yeah, that's hard. Oh, Cuba. I like how visual this one is.
Yeah.
This is a newer ransomware gang. Cuba Ransomware welcomes you. This site contains information.
Oh, go ahead, Sherry. I'm sorry.
No, please, Matt, go for it.
I was going to say they're kind of a new kid on the block, and they have really come out and differentiated themselves by being very flamboyant about how they put their website together and how they announce these data leaks to everyone.
Well, and Matt and I got curious. I was like, what are they making these websites in? So we downloaded these three, the Happy blog, Conti, and Cuba, and we were so intrigued to find out that Cuba is WordPress. They literally have set up a WordPress blog, which they're using to extort people.
Yep.
And you can see that right here in the code for a WP content theme. So I think that's fascinating. Just another example of how the dark web has evolved really to leverage the same, not just the same tactics, but the same software that we use out here in the clear web. It's all an economy. So
worth pointing out too that is their actual WordPress login. So we were able to go through the back end of the website and find their specific administrator login. So yeah, maybe we take a run at that at some point. I don't know.
Oh my God. So with that, we're going to wrap up and take some questions. I do want to mention we have a ransomware response class coming up. It is a one-day class designed for IT folks or technical folks. Security folks are also very much welcome in the class. It helps you identify early indicators of compromise for ransomware cases, stop ransomware before it takes over your network. There's hands-on labs where you decrypt the data safely. There's a lot of little gotchas there. And Matt has come up with a whole standard process for doing that. So I don't know of any other class like this. Really excited to be running it virtually. And that is on May 13th. And if you register by April 23rd, you get the early bird tuition. So with that, we will take some questions. Keep in touch with us. We'll just stick around for another 5 minutes. So feel free to type into chat if there's anything you want to have answered.
Thanks, Sherry and Matt. We do have some questions that came from our audience during the presentation, and thanks for the reminder that you can still submit questions if you have any. I want to start with this one. How are products bought on the dark web delivered?
Ooh,
That's a really good question.
That's a great question. Sometimes the mail. Depends, is it a digital product or a physical product? You will find sometimes it doesn't show up because law enforcement is pretty decent about saying, hey, that's probably drugs. But yeah, sometimes the mail. Matt, do you want to expand a little bit or talk about the digital side?
Yeah, actually, before we go digital, I'd love to talk about the physical stuff because there are really in-depth guides that are available in a lot of the beginner forums on how to do this right. So how to spot like an abandoned house you can use for a drop location for your products, or the advice to use the U.S. Postal Service instead of UPS because of government regulations, it's harder for them to search those packages than it would be if it was a commercial carrier. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways that that this stuff can happen, and ironically, a lot of it ends up making it through. So yeah, interesting. Digital stuff is usually delivered in encrypted format through a site like Mega, though. That again, as Sherry mentioned, is pretty permissive about what it allows. They don't really do a lot of policing of content. So stuff that is sold via the marketplaces a lot of times just comes in the form of a download link and a password for an encrypted zip file.
Wow, that's fascinating that a lot of the goods still end up getting delivered despite all efforts. Next question. Yes. How do we keep our data off of the dark web?
Don't get hacked. I mean, really the number one and number two things you can do are don't click on links in phishing emails and use a unique password for every website, because nowadays it's not about picking a super long and strong password. That's important too. But if you use the same password for LinkedIn as you do for your bank, and LinkedIn gets hacked, you might not know about that for 6 months. And meanwhile, the criminals have taken your password and are using it to log into your bank account. So don't click on links and phishing emails, use unique passwords. And actually number 3 is turn on multi-factor authentication. That way, even if your password's stolen, there's something else protecting your accounts.
Great, thank you for that. Let's see, the last question that we're going to do today, is it illegal to be on the dark web?
Well, it'll depend, of course, on your country and your jurisdiction and things like that. But typically, it's not illegal just to be there. Buying illegal things is normally illegal, so I wouldn't do that. But yeah, make sure you're familiar with the laws in your jurisdiction or in the vendors. Well, I guess you can't always tell the vendor's jurisdiction, and talk to a qualified and experienced attorney if you're not sure.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate all your responses to those questions. Thank you both for that great presentation. Once again, I'm Natalie Adams with LMG Security. We would like to thank everybody who attended today's webinar. Thank you and have a great day.